In a small playground in Kyoto, a mother sits on a wooden bench watching her 3-year-old struggle to climb a rope ladder. The child slips, tries again, slips again. The mother does not move. She does not call out. She does not rush forward with her hands outstretched. She simply watches, with a stillness so complete she looks like she has been sitting there for 100 years. And on the child's 5th attempt, tiny fingers gripping rope, legs trembling with effort, he reaches the top. The mother smiles quietly. She does not clap. She does not shout, "Amazing," or "Good job." She simply nods, as if she always knew he would get there. If you grew up in the West, that scene might make you uncomfortable. Your instinct might be to call that mother cold or passive, or even neglectful. But what if that moment of stillness was not indifference? What if it was one of the most sophisticated acts of parenting you will ever witness? What if the silence itself was the lesson? There is a concept in Japanese parenting culture called Mimamoru, written with 2 characters, one meaning to watch and one meaning to protect. Together, they describe something the English language has no clean word for: the act of protecting a child by watching them rather than intervening. Not ignoring, not abandoning, watching with full presence and full intention, trusting that the child's struggle is not a problem to be solved, but a process to be honored. Mimamoru is not passive. It is one of the most active and disciplined things a parent can do, because everything in our nervous system screams at us to help, to fix, to smooth the path. Choosing to stay still when your child is struggling is an act of profound restraint. And in Japanese culture, it is considered a form of deep love. Alongside Mimamoru sits another concept, gaman, pronounced gaman, written with 2 characters, one meaning to endure and one carrying the meaning of a self that persists. Gaman is the quiet practice of bearing difficulty with dignity, without complaint, without performance. It is not suppression. It is not suffering in silence because you have no other choice. It is the cultivated ability to sit inside discomfort and not be destroyed by it. Japanese children are not just taught gaman as a lesson, they are allowed to experience it, early and often, so that by the time they are teenagers, the feeling of difficulty is not foreign to them, it is familiar. And familiar things do not frighten us the way unknown things do. There's a third idea woven into all of this, one that sits underneath both Mimamoru and gaman like a root system beneath a forest. It is called kodawari. Kodawari, written with characters that together suggest a kind of devoted, almost obsessive care for the process of doing something, rather than the outcome. Kodawari is why a Japanese craftsman will spend 40 years perfecting the angle of a knife blade. It is why a child in Japan is encouraged to redo their shoelace knot, not because the first one was wrong, but because the second one could be better. Kodawari teaches children that the doing is the point, that patience is not what you practice while you wait for the result. Patience is the result. Now, consider what Western parenting culture has built instead. In the United States, the United Kingdom, and much of Western Europe, the dominant parenting philosophy of the last 3 decades has been built around praise, intervention, and acceleration. We are told to celebrate every small win loudly. We are told that struggle is a sign something has gone wrong. We rush to comfort crying children within seconds. We fill silence with words. We fill difficulty with solutions. We hand children the answer before they have had time to feel the weight of the question. And we do all of this with enormous love, which is what makes it so difficult to see clearly. Because the result, despite all that love, is a generation of children and young adults who find delayed gratification almost unbearable, who experience ordinary frustration as a crisis, and who have never learned to sit quietly inside their own discomfort without reaching for something to make it stop. A landmark study conducted by researchers at the University of Rochester, published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, found that children who were able to tolerate waiting and resist immediate reward showed dramatically better outcomes across nearly every measurable life category: academic achievement, emotional regulation, physical health, even the quality of their adult relationships, decades later. The research confirmed what Japanese grandmothers have practiced for centuries. Patience is not a personality trait some children are born with and others are not. It is a skill. And like every skill, it is built through repetition, through exposure, and critically, through being allowed to practice it without someone rescuing you from the discomfort of the attempt. A separate body of research from Tohoku University in Japan, examining parenting behaviors across Japanese and American households, found that Japanese mothers intervened physically in their child's independent play significantly less often than American mothers, even when the child showed visible signs of frustration. And yet, the Japanese children in the study showed higher tolerance for frustration by age 4 and stronger persistence on difficult tasks by age 6. The researchers noted something quietly extraordinary in their findings. The Japanese mothers were not less attentive. Eye tracking data showed they were watching their children more closely than the American mothers. They were simply doing something different with that attention. They were using it to witness, not to intervene. That is Mimamoru made visible in a laboratory. So, what does this look like in daily life? How do you begin shifting toward this philosophy when you were raised in a culture that taught you that helping is always the highest form of love? Here is your first tactic, and it is simpler than you expect. The next time your child is struggling with something physically safe, a puzzle, a jar lid, a knot in their shoelace, a rope ladder, set a timer in your mind for 90 seconds before you offer help. Do not speak, do not hover, do not make a face that communicates worry. Simply watch them with calm, open attention. 90 seconds is longer than it feels. Most children, given 90 uninterrupted seconds, will either solve the problem themselves or find a new approach they would never have discovered if you had stepped in at second 15. What you are building in that silence is not just the child's patience. You are building your own. Because Mimamoru requires you to sit inside your own discomfort, the discomfort of watching someone you love struggle. And that is gamen in action, modeled without a single word being spoken. Here is the second practice, drawn directly from the way Japanese mothers structure daily rhythms. Choose one task each day that your child currently does with your help and hand it to them completely. Not with instruction, not with a demonstration, just with expectation and space. In Japan, this philosophy is sometimes called seikatsu shido, the guidance of life through life itself, rather than through explanation. Children in Japanese homes are expected to manage their own school bags, their own indoor shoes, their own lunch preparation in many elementary settings from remarkably young ages. Not because Japanese parents do not care, but because they understand that competence is one of the deepest sources of a child's self-respect. Every time you do something for a child that they could do themselves, you are, without meaning to, sending them a message that you do not quite trust them with their own life. Handing the task back is an act of faith, and children feel that faith in their bones. The third tactic is perhaps the most counterintuitive one for Western parents, and also the most powerful. Stop filling the silence. When your child comes to you frustrated, when they say, "I can't do it," or "it's too hard," or simply start to cry, resist the reflex to immediately offer words. Most Western parents respond to a child's frustration with a rapid sequence of reassurance, advice, distraction, and praise, delivered in quick succession before the child has had a chance to actually feel what they are feeling. In Japan, a common response from a mother in this moment is simply to sit close, say very little, and allow the emotion to move through the child like weather. The feeling is not a problem, it is information, and when children are given the space to feel it fully without being rushed toward resolution, something remarkable happens. They resolve it themselves. They find the bottom of the feeling, they push back up, and they return to the task. That return, that self-generated recovery, is what patience actually is, not the absence of frustration, the ability to move through it and come out the other side without having been broken. None of this means you become a distant parent. None of this means you withhold warmth or affection or connection. Japanese parenting culture is extraordinarily warm. What it is not is anxious, and that distinction is everything. An anxious parent who rushes to fix teaches a child that the world is full of problems that require rescue. A warm, present, still parent who watches and trusts teaches a child that the world is full of challenges that can be met. The child who grows up with Mimamoru, with gaman, with kodawari woven into their daily experience, does not grow into an adult who falls apart when things get hard. They grow into an adult who knows, somewhere deep and unshakable, that difficulty is not the end of the story. It is just the part before they figure it out. And perhaps the most beautiful thing about this philosophy is that it costs nothing. It requires no equipment, no curriculum, no special training. It requires only that you slow down, trust more, and speak less. It requires that you love your child enough to let them be uncomfortable. And if you can do that, if you can sit on that metaphorical bench in Kyoto and watch with full presence and full faith, you will be giving your child something that no amount of praise, no amount of rescuing, and no amount of helicopter parenting ever could. You will be giving them themselves. If this video shifted something in the way you see patience and how it is truly built in a child, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want more on how the world's wisest cultures quietly build resilience, calm, and confidence in their children, subscribe. There's a lot more coming. See you in the next one.